Good afternoon from IATEFL Online. I'm Scott Thornbury. I'm the guest interviewer this afternoon, or for this slot, and my interviewee is Angelos Bolas from Athens, Greece. Angelos, welcome to the interviews. Now, tell me, just the session that you did last night, can you give me a brief abstract of it? I know that there was a very large word in the middle of the title, something like heteronormativity. Would that be it?
Thank you for inviting me for the interview. Yesterday I presented a research I did a couple of years ago, and it had to do with whether the fact that in course books there are no references to lesbian, gays, bisexual, transgender identities, whether this would affect their motivation, and at the end of the road whether this would affect their language learning. And that was the initial premise. So we started a little bit with some introduction to motivation, and then we moved on to how we develop selves, and this is the driving force we have in being successful learners, and whether there is any relationship there with representation or absence, therefore, of LGBTQ identities.
And essentially you did find a correlation, between the gay invisibility, if you like, or LGBT invisibility in coursebook materials and lack of identification on the part of some LGBT students with the materials, because the materials are, to use the big word again, heteronormative. Can you just explain what that means?
That basically would mean that the materials themselves are designed in a way where the only natural, accepted or normative context is the heterosexual one. So we see boys who befriend girls, we see boys who date girls, we see traditional, if you like, families with a mother and father and two children. So that's the only reality that we present to learners.
And I couldn't help noticing, Angelos, that the data that you used, or the course books that you used in your study, were a few years old now. Do you think that things have changed?
Well, I chose the particular course books because they're very successful, and I contacted the publishers and I said, "What's your bestseller?" And that's what they said. And also, these books are the ones that I use in the school I teach in Athens as well. So even though they're a little bit old, they're still out there, people use them. Things have started changing. I talked yesterday about the development with Ofsted and new regulations in the UK, how we have publications about how to tackle issues of bullying really in the classroom, but we don't have anything concrete that actually would prepare teachers and learners about what is out there in the real world. So yes, there are steps, but these are tiny at the moment, very, very small steps.
I mean, when you said Ofsted, I think it's the case also in the United States that a lot of ESL materials are more inclusive in every respect, not just about LGBT issues, because the assumption is that if people are going to study in the States or study in Britain or live in Britain, etc., that it's part of the acculturation process. But in the EFL world, which you work in and I work in, is this really feasible? Do you think that there's ever going to be a change or more inclusivity in course books which are designed for a global market?
You're right. You're very right in saying this and differentiate between ESOL or ESL and EFL. But if I can go back in my first days of teaching, I remember teaching learners English, and then when they would come into the UK, they would come back very angry, saying, "I didn't understand the person in the tube. So why am I learning English if I cannot understand that?" So yes, obviously we don't teach learners English as in an ESOL environment where English is the language that they speak in their immediate environment, but they will come to contact with countries like the UK or the States. But also when it comes to their own environment, we are still educators. Yes, we are language teachers and we should cater for preparing learners for the language, but it is part of what we do as educators. We prepare them for what is out there, and if I can do it through English, that's fine. Obviously, there are problems with the way, for example, the Greek teachers deal with it in the Greek school. But it is my responsibility as a teacher also to do it from my own little, if you like, perspective.
So would you say that the publishers are being unnecessarily cautious, particularly in the light of, if you think of media generally and the much greater visibility of gay and lesbian people in, for example, sitcoms like Modern Family, movies like Moonlight, the latest Disney movie has got apparently a gay subtext, and that's being screened internationally. Do you think that because it's an educational issue, people are really nervous about sort of bringing in issues that might frighten the horses, if you like?
There's a very good point in what you're saying, in that in the movies that you mentioned, we either see characters that are not real in any sense. I mean, obviously because they're movies or cartoons, we go to extremes, or we go to characters that are doomed. So there is no in-between situation, which is the everyday life. And I'm not suggesting that there are not difficulties in the lives of gay people in various parts of the world, but it's not only that. So if publishers get worried about it, I think it's just an excuse. They just use these cartoonish characters, if you like, as an excuse so as not to include what's out there. And we're not talking about adding something new to course books. We are talking about make them understand that course books are means of presenting what is out there of the reality, and we deprive our learners.
But so is it just a case then, if you say you're not adding something new, what are you suggesting should be, what changes are you suggesting? I was suggesting, for example, instead of the heteronormative illustrations, if you like, that they could be, without explicitly saying that these people are gay or whatever, that two men like shopping together or two women on holiday or whatever, would that be enough? Would that satisfy you? Because at least I mean, one of the things I've noticed in the years teaching course books is there's much greater inclusivity of women, for example, who are doing roles which are not simply caring or servile, and of disabled people, of women with headscarves, for example, but there's still no clearly gay representation. Now, would that be enough, or would you want to see dialogues between two men, dating, all that kind of thing?
I would definitely not want to see, well, that's a very personal opinion, but I wouldn't want to see a particular chapter or unit on gay, because this would have had the opposite effect.
Exactly, by compartmentalizing and separating it out.
Separating. But what I would like to see is what is out there. So when I see a unit on family, I'd like to see all the different kinds of families, not only about gay families, but I want to see the family as we have it so far, with a mother and a father, the single parent family, the single sex family. So I'm not looking into having particular depictions of snapshots of gay life or anything like that, but just what is out there. Not to, because a course book writer, much like a movie maker, they have this power of actually choosing what they will show as real, and this is very political. So course book writers need to not writers, but course book publishers need to understand that and assume this role and the responsibility that this role has.
One of the points that came up in the discussion afterwards was that perhaps it's not really the publishers to blame either. There's actually resistance from the teachers, and the teachers are nervous about having to deal with themes which they don't either identify with or feel that they can cope with, because a picture of two men shopping together might generate homophobic comments, for example, and teachers don't really want to invite that into their classrooms. What would you say to that?
I think they're very right in being scared and in not knowing how to tackle all these issues, because we don't train them. I'm involved in pre-service training, and I know there is nothing there. But as a trainer, I train my teachers to use what they have, and what they have is a course book. If it's not in the course book, then for my trainees, it doesn't make sense to train them on how to use materials that are more inclusive, because they're not. So if I have, let's say, a session on this, then I will have this question as you know, this is fine what you're saying, okay, we can do it, but where is the material where we will base our approach? So it's both parties to be blamed, but it has to start from somewhere, and this somewhere is course books.
I read an article recently that it published in a Japanese teacher's journal, which was, it was a small-scale research, but the researcher was investigating attitudes to exactly this, to being LGBT and other taboo subjects in course books, and asked both students and teachers, and there was much less resistance on the part of the students. Like, these were, you know, young adults or whatever in Japan, than there was on the part of the teachers. So maybe it's again, people are being unnecessarily cautious because they think the market will resist.
The students have nothing to lose, really. So they are, and of course they're in the new generation. They're much more open than we are, and they want to learn. They want this reality to be part of what they learn because they have gay friends. They know people who are gay, so they want to not learn more about it because there's nothing really to learn, but to see it in their actual everyday learning as something that is real and out there. The teachers have things to lose because we have employers that would perhaps fire them, their reputation, but at the end of the day is the reputation we have as professionals. So one has to choose. Would you give away something that is only human just to have a secure job, or would you stand against it and stand to what you believe? And as I say, this is not about advertising something or recruiting people to gayness. This is just being inclusive.
What about the argument that, I mean, you're a gay man, I'm a gay man, we've been banging on about this, I have for a long time, you have, but it's always people within the tribe, as it were, who are LGBT identifying, who are going on about this. Is it really going to ever make any changes while it's still a kind of, and is there a danger that of the accusation that it's just us pushing a gay agenda? How would you answer that?
I think it has to start, obviously it has to start from us. If you're a person from, you know, if you're a woman, you would be a feminist, and then we saw men actually supporting women and saying this is wrong. They can say, you know, they are like us. There's nothing different. The same is true about all other people who have gone through similar phases. So it has to start from us because we are the people who are more sensitive about it because we've experienced it. As a learner of English, I've experienced it. As a teacher, I am experiencing it now. So it's easier for me to go out there and speak. So once this is established and once we have a voice out there in conferences like this, then it is much easier to see people who do not necessarily identify with my sexuality or anybody's sexuality to talk about it. And I think now, especially in the States with the issue of gender fluidity at the moment, I think it's people of all sexualities that talk about it, and people start seeing this as an issue.
Well, it was a great session, and there was you timed it so well that there's a nice little room for discussion afterwards, and the discussions at these sessions are often as interesting as the content of the session.
Sometimes more interesting, yes.
But it was very gratifying to see a range of people there, and a lot of opinions, but a lot of positivity. So I don't think it's entirely doom and gloom. And it's talks like yours that help in pushing the whales up the beach, or whatever the metaphor is I'm looking for. But
I think you're right. And in the audience, we didn't have only gay people. It was everyone.
No,
really.
exactly.
So,
exactly. That's good. Angelos, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. That's all from this interview, and the next interview will be coming up shortly after the break.